Thanks for checking out my video, everyone. I'm Ben, and for episode 5 of the SG Chronicles, we've got something special. This is the SG Supreme Koa. Let's get into it. Well, welcome back, everyone. I'm really excited about this one. This is the Sweetwater exclusive SG Supreme Koa top with the Sweetwater Gibson collaboration pickups, the Sugarbuckers. Look at that. That is just beautiful, isn't it? Now, it wasn't until this guitar was listed online that I started wondering, has Gibson done a Koa wood SG before? And they have actually several times. The first I came across was in 1991. Orville by Gibson released a Koa SG, solid Koa body actually, retailed for about $500, Japanese only release, and it had a identical feature set to the SG standard at the time. Then fast forward a couple decades later, in 2018, Gibson comes out with the Flying Eagle SG, which is a Koa top, mahogany back, 5-piece laminated maple neck, crazy inlays, and it retailed for about $8,300, which is insane even today. And then there's been a few other select Koa models that were like NAMM show releases that were eventually sold to the public, and they were more or less based on the Flying Eagle, but just without some of the more ornate appointments. Now, I've never been in a position to actually buy a Koa wood SG before, so when this popped online, I knew I was going to have to make some sacrifices to make that happen, and unfortunately, I did have to let go of a few friends. But as an SG lover, I feel good about this, and I just needed to make this happen. It doesn't hurt either that I just have an obsession with Koa. There's something about it that I'm just drawn to, and I know some people are thinking, it's just wood. Yes, it is just wood, but I don't know what it is. I've just always loved Koa instruments. I've got Koa ukuleles, I've got this Koa wood Takamine guitar that I love here. Look at this. Isn't that just simply beautiful? This is one of my first guitars actually, and I just love it to death. And so, of course, when this popped up, like I said, I just had to make it happen. Now, I've also noticed that concurrent with this release, there is a Koa wood Les Paul Modern, which it's interesting to me that the Gibson exclusive is a Les Paul Modern and not a Les Paul Supreme. And then Sweetwater took an SG Supreme option and not an SG Modern Koa option. But I guess, as you guys probably know if you watched my last review, and what I'll say again in this review, is that the Supreme is really a fraction of a hair different than an SG Modern, but with an added $1,000 price tag. So for the followers of my channel, or maybe you've seen the video before, I did a pretty comprehensive review of the SG Supreme not too many months ago, and to be honest with you, it has more or less in common with this guitar, the only difference being the obvious. We have 3 pickups here instead of 2, and then you've got this nice Koa top on it. But everything else is pretty much the same, so I'm going to kind of breeze through those details so this video is not 30 minutes long. And if you really do want to know more about the SG Supreme, I suggest you click on this video right here, and you can watch my video on it. And of course, if anything does really deviate from the Koa wood model, I will of course bring that up in this video. Now, this limited edition Koa model is a $500 upcharge over the regular SG Supreme, putting this model at about $4,000, which is pretty insanely expensive, considering all you're really getting that's different is the Koa top and these extra set of pickups here. And as I get into the electronics here, you'll see that the pickup selecting options are actually more limited than what you would find on the regular Supreme. Now for the case, of course, we've got the standard jet black case that Gibson's been using these days. Gibson logo on the cover here. Inside, plush black interior. And there's a pocket underneath the neck rest, of course. Inside the pocket, we've got the usual Gibson case key. Almost. For some reason, there's no Gibson owner's manual in here, but I do have a warranty card, an ad for the Gibson app, the Gibson polishing cloth, a Gibson strap, a Gibson selector knob, an optional poker chip, the Gibson tool, and keys to the case. Now, I've never had a Gibson show up to me with the selector knob inside a little baggie and not on the guitar, and the only reason I can think they'd do that is if they're worried about it popping off in transit and scratching up the finish. But honestly, I've bought a lot of Gibsons over the years, custom shops, Gibson USA models, and I've never had one show up without the selector tip on there, because usually when they're in the case and the lid's on, that selector tip's not going anywhere. So if you have any theories, I'd be interested in hearing them. Look at this top. It is simply stunning there. It's not quilted by any means, but if you catch the right angle, you can see the light dancing across the grains, and it looks almost that similar effect that you see on those quilted tops. Now, of course, the first thing I think anybody really notices, though, is all this gold hardware in these 3 pickups. It looks like 3 gold bricks there. And I've said this before on record, one of my videos here, and I say it again, not a fan of gold hardware on guitars. I do think with the warmth of the wood and the warmth of the gold hardware, it is a really good match. It's a lot better than the gold and the wine red finish here, or the gold and the Fireburst Supreme, the gold and the black Supreme. This is definitely the best looking one by far. And there is a ton of gold on it too. You've got gold strap buttons, gold jack plate, gold selector switch ring, you've got gold stop bar, gold tunematic bridge, gold pickups, gold tuners up here at the top. Yeah, it's just an overall pretty flashy guitar. There's no bones about that. Now for the body, we have the exact same construction as the existing SG Modern. The only difference, of course, being that instead of a maple top, you've got this koa top. But otherwise, the styling cues are all from the 61 SG. Now, of course, there's a few variances in the carving on this model versus this model, but I don't really chalk those up to anything more than being somebody came in fresh on Monday and made this carve, and somebody was half hour from leaving work on Friday and made this carve. So really, if you watch the video from that SG Supreme, you're going to get about 99% of the carving notes on this model. There's one big difference I did notice, which is my favorite angle on all of the SGs with the 61 body style, is right here where the slab starts to angle back up towards the neck. It's a little more pronounced on this koa model than it is on the SG Supreme Wine Red. And then obviously there's more routing in the top for the third pickup here, and here's a look at what that looks like right there. You can see you got a nice clean tenon joint right there also, and looks like we got some Gibson code there. SG sucks, W24. No, I think what that's supposed to be is SG Supreme Koa Sweetwater 2024. Now, one of my favorite features about this koa model here is the gloss nitrocellulose finish on this, because they wanted to emphasize the wood. And one thing that I really like is that you can actually see clear as day where the koa top is and where the mahogany is there. And I think that's just an awesome thing for anybody that admires the construction of these guitars. And that's actually part of the reason why I got the wine red model of the other SG Supreme, is because it's the only SG Supreme where you can also see that similar sort of delineation there between the maple top and the mahogany top. So keep that in mind if you are infatuated with the construction of SGs and you're in the market for one. And lastly, one thing I didn't mention in the last Supreme video that I should mention here is, if you're curious about an SG Supreme's thickness of the body, it comes in at about 1.47 inches, almost an inch and a half, which is just about 1/10 of an inch thicker than what you'd find on a regular SG standard or even an SG 61 standard. Now, just like any other SG Supreme, you've got an identical neck construction on this, in that you've got a solid mahogany neck, the only thing being these two wings up at the headstock that are glued onto the sides there. You've got an ebony fretboard right there. This is a compound radius. The measurements I was getting was somewhere around 10 inches on the first fret, and then around 14 inches down here at the bottom of the fretboard. And of course, this is a 2-octave 24 fretboard, which is pretty cool, just like any other SG Supreme. And then you've got these really ornate inlays going all the way up the neck here. These are the split block inlays. And then up here at the headstock, you've got the chandelier inlay. Some people like it, some people don't like it. And then at the very top, you've got this Gibson inlay. All of these inlays are mother of pearl on both the SG Supreme models that I've got here and any Les Paul Supreme as well, making sure that they get a nice sparkle and pearlescent glow in the light there. Pretty cool. Now, if you want some measurements on this neck, well, it's actually measuring nearly identical to the other SG Supreme, which is kind of a good thing, right? On the nut here, we've got a 1.7. On the first fret here, I'm getting a 0.82 inches. And down here on the 12th fret, I'm getting a 0.92 inches. So about 1/10 of an inch difference between the first fret and 12th fret, which is pretty thin for a neck, and this is a slim taper neck as well. Now, when it comes to the angle back of the neck on this model, I'm getting a pretty shallow 2.5 degrees from the body to the angle of the neck here, and then from the neck to the headstock here, I'm getting a much more normal 17.8 degree angle back, which is more in line with Gibson spec. But yeah, that 2.5 degrees is pretty shallow, putting it right on par with my Custom Shop 61 reissue. I actually think that's kind of a good thing for this guitar, because sometimes when the angle back is too far, I think it's a little uncomfortable to play. Now, I've never played a 3-pickup Les Paul or SG before in my life, but I've always wanted to, since I saw the Captain Kirk Douglas SG that was released in 2020 that had those nice 3 chrome pickups, and I thought that was one of the coolest things. And when I first saw it there, I was like, man, I would love to play that someday, and I'd still love to play that guitar one day. So, of course, I'm very excited to give this one a shot. Now, there are a few differences on this 3-pickup SG than other SGs, and it seems like Gibson trolled the internet and saw how people were modding those guitars and decided to copy that wiring scheme. Because traditionally what Gibson does is, in the bridge position, you've got the bridge pickup. In the middle position, you've got the bridge and the middle, and in the neck position, you have just the neck. And then the way the controls are wired is that obviously you've got the volume and the tone for the bridge and the middle pickup, they're combined. So if you're in the middle position, you're controlling the master volume for both these pickups, as well as the tone for both these pickups. And then finally, you've got a neck volume and a neck tone by itself. Now Gibson threw that out the window for this model, and what you've got now is the guitar functions just like a 2-pickup guitar. So in this position, you've got your bridge. In your middle position, you've got the bridge and the neck. And in the neck position, you've obviously got your neck. Now the middle pickup is completely independent of that, and what they did instead was wire this volume control to the middle so you can bring it up within any of those positions. So if I'm in the middle position, it's these 2 pickups, and I can just bring up the middle pickup to amplitude so you can hear it, or you can turn it all the way off if you don't want to hear it at all. Same as I can go to the neck position, and while the neck is on, I can roll in or out the middle pickup. And I think that's a more versatile approach to it. Now that's not where all the fun stops. Additionally, they gave you push-pull knobs for each pickup, which turn them into genuine coil splits, not coil taps, so you can get more Fenderish tones, as some would say. Now the obvious downside of this, of course, is everything's wired to a master tone control here. So instead of being able to go in the middle position and maybe rolling the tone down on the neck so you have a little more body to your trebly lead pickup there, you kind of are just stuck with whatever you can negotiate with this one knob. So you win some, you lose some. Now I did mention before that these are the Gibson Sweetwater exclusive Sugarbucker pickups here. Now the special thing about these pickups is they are Alnico 4 magnets, which is only used in Gibson's other pickup, the $1,000 59 series reissue pickup, which I did a review of those, sort of a review. Right here, you can check that out. These ones are also wax potted. Now this is what Sweetwater says about these pickups, and I paraphrase. Potting a pickup is desirable for any guitarist who plays with a decent amount of gain, yet plenty of vintage humbucker fanatics favor unpotted designs for their clarity and enhanced dynamics. Luckily, the sweetness, bell-like character, and naturally lower output of Alnico 4 magnets compensates for these traditional downsides of potting, adding up to a pickup that retains all the crisp articulation of a PAF, but without the microphonics. Now here's a look at the back of these pickups here. Nothing too crazy there. You can see we've got R for rhythm Sugarbucker, M for middle Sugarbucker, and T for the treble Sugarbucker. Now we'll get to hear what all that sounds like in a test coming up here, and I will try to do a pretty extensive sound test just so we can hear all the different options of that. Now if you're curious about the readings of these Sugarbuckers like I am, well here's what we've got. For the bridge pickup, I'm getting a 7.61. For the neck pickup, I'm getting a 7.55, and in the middle position, I'm getting a 3.81. Now I'm going to roll in the middle pickup for all 3 of these selections. Now in the bridge position, I'm getting a 3.86. For the neck, I'm getting a 3.85. And in the middle position, that's all 3 pickups all up to 10, I am getting a 2.56. Now unfortunately with this circuit, there's actually no way to test just the middle pickup by itself to see what it's getting, because just like a traditional wired Les Paul or SG, once the neck or the bridge pickup is at 0, it kills the circuit. Now let's pop open the back cover here and take a look at the wiring. Well, you can see this giant bundle of wires pouring into the cavity from all the pickups. Just a mess of wires, really. And we've got our lone orange drop capacitor there doing all the heavy lifting. Now the setup that came with the SG Supreme Koa was a little more to my liking than what was on my other SG Supreme here that I reviewed a few months ago. But again, honestly, I chalk that up to somebody had a great weekend, came in on Monday and was very happy, and somebody else had a terrible week and it was the end of the day on Friday and they had to get that guitar out the door. So really, not a big difference there, but just more to my liking. I'd also like to say thanks to Stringjoy for helping me provide some of these strings for these reviews. These are actually my custom Broadway set that I've been fine-tuning and adjusting over the years to find the perfect set for my fingers. And if you're interested in getting your own set of custom strings, I would definitely suggest checking them out. They are truly awesome. Now strings go hand in hand with frets, and I'll say that the fretwork on this guitar was also really awesome, and I was very impressed with that because I know that that's an area that I think a lot of people had some issues with Gibson guitars lately, but for me, this guitar definitely seems to pass the quality inspection. Now regarding the weight of the SG Supreme Koa, this one comes in at 8.18 pounds, or about 8 pounds and 3 ounces, putting it about almost a pound higher than the wine red SG Supreme that I reviewed earlier. Now I wonder if more of that difference is because of the wood or maybe because of the added hardware. I mean, how much would a pickup sized piece of wood weigh compared to the weight of a pickup? I don't know, but I can tell you this. On the Sweetwater website, there's a few of these Koa SGs listed still, and they seem to be all generally about 6, 7, 8 ounces heavier than their regular Supreme counterpart. So I'm inclined to think that the Koa just in general does have to be a little bit heavier, right? Now some of you might be wondering, what about the neck dive test on the heavier Koa wood guitar? Well, I'm gonna give that a shot here. If you remember the previous SG Supreme video that I did, the SG Supreme barely passed the test there. It wanted to go, but just never fully gave in. I don't expect this guitar to fare as bad as that, being that the body is about a pound heavier. So let's give it a shot. Now to my surprise, it is almost the exact same, but of course, when anybody plays a guitar, they don't sit there and waddle back and forth like a penguin, so I don't think you're gonna have to worry too much about it, and it's certainly better performing than many other SGs that I've played before. Now I'm going to do a sound test here with this guitar. I'm going to try and do a pretty extensive test with a lot of the tones, but not make the test so long that it's just impossible to watch. And of course I'll put all the settings right here in a neat little graphic. Now, knowing what I know about the SG Supreme series, I know it's a collector's guitar. Like I said before, it's a $1,000 overage, or $1,500 overage in this case, over a regular SG Modern, and it has the nearly same identical specs. I mean, of course, this one has the Sugarbuckers and 3 pickups, but side by side this guitar with a SG Modern, and I don't think you'll be disappointed if you get the lower price model. Now, that being said, I love this guitar. I'm not soon going to forget the friends that I had to get rid of to pay for this guitar, but that's just the life of being a collector, and I love SGs, and honestly, I have zero regrets right now. Check back with me in a year. Now, regarding the sound of these pickups, I do have to agree with what Sweetwater said. The tones are almost glass-like or bell-like. It's a very fragile sound that really sounds great when you dial it in. If you've ever played any custom buckers, even the Seth Lovers have kind of a similar sound to it, and especially the 59 custom shop, whatever humbuckers. It's like this very hollow, almost quite tinny sound that picks up every single nuance that your fingers are doing. And it's just one of those tones that once you dial it in, I don't think you can get a better sound than custom buckers. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to get that sound out of these pickups, but it is reminiscent of that. Now, that being said, I do agree with some of the reviewers that said, you know, the third pickup is a fun option, but it's really not a game changer. If that pickup wasn't there, this guitar would still rock. And I did come across a couple instances where people just outright disconnected their third pickup, not on the Koa model, but on other SGs and Les Pauls, because they were having a problem with the actual pick hitting the pickup when it was active and causing a clicking sound. Now, I did leave a little bit of that clicking sound in the sound test, and I put a little mark there that said C note at end so that you could now listen to me and go back and hear it if you're curious about that. I did find that if I lowered the middle pickup just a little bit, it was not really so much of a problem. And really, it wasn't even when I was strumming that I was having the issue. It was actually when I was picking, the tip of my pointed pick was tapping the pickup there. So I think there's ways around it. Some people have said you just have to dial in your strumming between pickups. I think that sounds ridiculous because the pickups are like a quarter of an inch apart from each other, but you know, to each their own. Anyway, that is my review of this beautiful Koa Wood SG Supreme model. If you like this video, please consider clicking the like button. If you like content like this, please consider subscribing. As always, I appreciate you watching my video, and I will see you next time.